because most of the people that I piss off on my channel live in Europe. So, I spotted dovetailing back there. Oops. Right, we'll be nice. Anyway, let me move on. Is this even going to work? Okay, State of the Sim Nation. Let me talk about this first of all before we get into it. I did the keynote last year, and last year it was my history in Sim. So how I got here, how I built Frooglesim, you know, where I came from, who I am, kind of thing. And that went pretty well. So Evan reached out to me after the event and said, "Do you want to do it again?" I said, "Sure." That was a blast. I'll do it again, and then I forgot all about it. January, he messaged me and said, "Hey Pete, need your bio, need to know what you're speaking about." Now I treat such requests, which are tricky requests, a bit like air traffic control. If you, in air traffic control, you have an aircraft, you have a controller. If the controller doesn't speak to the aircraft, after a while, the aircraft will simply go away. So I used that principle with Evan, and he said, "What's your bio, what are you speaking about?" And I ignored him. He didn't go away, he came back a couple of weeks later and said, "What are you doing?" And I ignored him again. Now I seem to remember about a month or 2 months after that, somebody contacted my wife, which is kind of, in the air traffic control thing, is kind of like an FAA investigation to why. On a whim, I said, "State of the Sim Nation." I have a weekly news show. Who watches it? Who watches my news show? Cool. I have a weekly news show. I thought, let's do State of the Sim Nation. We can round up the year's key stories and see where we're at. And I thought, that's a great idea. So, about a week and a half ago when I started writing the presentation, I realized it's actually a lot harder to do. So I don't have enough for my entire time slot, I think. Maybe I do, I'm not sure. So I did a bit of a poll on Twitter and Facebook and some friends as well on my Discord server and said, "What do you think?" And a number of people said I should add on to the end of it Froogle's tricks and tips. So what hardware, software do I need, do I use, do I not able to live without in simulation? How do I do what I do? And I decided, yeah, we'll put that on the end. So if I do have time, you're going to see some slides on the end. Who here makes YouTube videos or wants to? Quite a lot of you. There is a recurring question I get asked about making YouTube videos, which I never answered, and it is answered at the end of this presentation, which is how do I record my videos. So let's move straight into it. State of the Sim Nation. This is the State of the Sim Nation according to the popular press. We are dead. We don't exist. There is no such thing. We're a bunch of nerds and there are no products for us. Interestingly, looking at the titles of the websites up here that posted this stuff, this one, Channel 9, what went wrong? Is my mic kind of fading out? It is. I'm going to move it anyway.
Hello?
No, that's not good. Hang on.
It was working, now it's not. There we go.
So this guy's Channel 9. That's a Microsoft website. That's a site owned by Microsoft. That's right. What went wrong with Flightsimcon from the market perspective? Well, you stop it. Interestingly as well over here, Flightsim is dead. That was published just before FSX launched. Go figure. So that's the general perception of flight simulation from the pundits, silly pundits. Let's look back over the past year. These are the things I'm going to cover in the State of the Sim Nation. There has been a lot going on in this past year, which is absolutely amazing. There's a list of companies up there. These are all companies that have had a significant impact, as far as I'm concerned, on the Sim Nation over the past year. The big thing, of course, virtual reality arrived. Who's using VR headsets? Quite a few of you. There will be more of you, I guarantee it. We're going to cover that. The cool thing with virtual reality arriving is it took what is old and made it new again. The state-of-the-art simulation for VR is FSX. Who knew that was going to happen? Next up, X-Plane, the ugly stepsister of simulations, took off. And I mean no disrespect to the X-Plane crowd. I know there are X-Plane developers here, there's some of them back. There you go. I like X-Plane. But it's always been viewed as the ugly stepsister. It really took off this year. We'll cover that. DCS World, continuing the puns, exploded. The combat sim actually completely exploded. We'll look at why. But more importantly as well is the next one. 3 new sims or sim-likes. Now I call them sim-likes because they're not hardcore, dedicated, full system simulations in the same vein as FSX and PNDT add-ons for FSX and all that good stuff. But they are sim-likes. They're gateway drugs. Okay. They introduce young people, or not so young people, into simulation and get them going. So obviously, Dovetail Games Flight School is a gateway drug into simulation. Combat Air Patrol 2 launched this week. Who knew that? Any of you are aware of that? There you go. 3 people, 4 or 5 people. A new sim came out this week called Combat Air Patrol 2. Sim-like. We'll look at that. Aerofly FS2. Who plays that or flies that? A couple. More people should do that. But anyway, there's that. We also learned over this past year there are 3 new sims coming. Dovetail Games Flight Simulator is obviously coming, hopefully soon. Combat Helo is coming, and this one is a really, really shocker. Who's heard of the Red Bull Air Race game? A few of you, I'm surprised.
Oh, my arm is tired.
There's a AAA racing game, Project Cars. You've heard of that, right? Yeah. A gorgeous, beautiful thing. The team behind Project Cars have made a flight sim, and it's in beta. It went into beta 2 weeks ago, so we're going to cover that as well. And then finally, tons of new mid-range and high-end hardware. I'll cover why that's important when we get to it, and then tons of new aircraft and new scenery, which I'm not going to cover because there was too much. Let's dive straight in. Virtual reality. This is a real thing. This is what Toshiba called, catchy name, Toshiba's head-mounted dome display. No, head-mounted dome projection system. And this is from 2006, which is when FSX launched. So at the time that FSX launched, this was the market's view of virtual reality. It cost tens of thousands of dollars. It was aimed at the military. It was aimed at high-end simulation. There's no way you're going to get it to run with FSX. It's just not going to happen. But that was virtual reality back then. Today, VR looks like that, which is of course the Oculus Rift. And the key thing with virtual reality arriving from us as simulation nuts, we all want to do VR, we want to be in our virtual planes, right? So VR is very exciting, but it was not possible until the guy at the bottom right, Dan Church, who made a product called Fly Inside FSX, turned up. The reason it was not possible is FSX and Prepared, if you add on Orbex scenery, which is phenomenal, but add on PMDG aircraft, add on Active Sky Next, Rex 4 Texture Direct, all the stuff that I normally fly with, Flight Tampa scenery, a couple of Aerosoft airports, Amsterdam will kill it for sure. Put all that stuff in, your frame rate is about 10. Okay? You can't do virtual reality, which requires a frame rate of about 90. It just doesn't work. So Dan came up with this thing. I don't think he came up with it, but he came up with a way of implementing it called asynchronous time warp. Those of you who saw my recent VR video already know this, but what it does, in a nutshell, I think, is renders a much larger image than you're looking at. Which means even though the sim is going along at 10 frames per second, you can still move your head and look around, and the VR headset keeps up. What it does is it gives you an incredibly smooth experience, irrespective of the performance of the sim, which is massive. And the best sim for it is FSX, because it's actually faster than Prepared. Prepared looks better, Prepared is more stable, Prepared does some wonderful graphical tricks and has a much better API for developers, but FSX is faster. In particular, FSX Steam Edition, there you go, I do love Dovetail. Okay, X-Plane. It's a cool video here, PMDG DC6, but X-Plane took off, really took off this year because of a crazy number of high-definition airliners or study airliners. The IXCG team at the back, hold your hands up. There you go, that's the guy, Kim. There have been an incredible number of study aircraft launches for X-Plane, which have really propelled it into the mainstream. The IXCG 737 Classic obviously is a classic, and it's propelled a lot of people into the sim. The arrival of these guys, PMDG, on the platform, and I said in the video, this aircraft will change X-Plane. What I meant to say was, this aircraft and the circumstances surrounding it will change X-Plane. PMDG arriving on the X-Plane platform means those people who previously also viewed X-Plane as the ugly stepsister will now get it and try it. No, I'm serious, and that's not a joke. There's a lot of people who were like, I would never touch X-Plane until PMDG did. Well, now we have. So you're going to get a lot of people coming into the X-Plane community who were never there before. In addition to PMDG, in addition to IXCG, who's heard of the reality packs? Reality expansion packs, one person? Not very many, okay, a few of you. The reality expansion packs are these amazing add-ons which take otherwise quite boring Coronado aircraft and make them A2A quality study aircraft. That's incredible, and it only happens in X-Plane. So the arrival of those things is pretty cool. As a result, we're now seeing more and more developers jumping on board with X-Plane, which is great. The other problem with X-Plane that we've always had is it doesn't have good traffic. It doesn't have life in the airports. It doesn't have good weather and all these other cool things which are very mature on FSX and Prepared. Now they're starting to arrive. X-Life breathes life into the aircraft, into the airport. It brings in traffic and moving things and makes it feel more real. The real weather connector is interesting. I actually had a dream about this thing last night. I told Megan, my wife, this morning, I dreamed about this stupid thing. I dreamed I was flying and there were no shadows on the clouds. And I'm like, stupid real weather connector. I don't know. It doesn't do that. But anyway, real weather connector uses an add-on called SkyMax Pro. They're both from X Aviation, and it gives you real weather. Like Active Sky Next kind of weather is what they're aiming for in X-Plane. It's not quite there yet. It's better than it was. But again, this is a shift into X-Plane. And I view X-Plane as, they've rotated and they're climbing out. It's very exciting. And I really do view X-Plane right now as quite possibly the most exciting simulation platform to keep an eye on. What next? Oh, there's some X-Plane stuff. So on the left there, the IXCG 737 Classic. Above it, one of the reality expansion packs for a camera, obviously assessing it, because that's what they do. And then the bottom right, Flight Factor 7. Flight Factor, another company, has been for a while making study level sims for X-Plane, not gaining a lot of traction outside of the X-Plane community. Now they could be. Moving on. DCS World 2.0 really made DCS World explode. Most people don't realize outside of DCS, this platform is home to more study level military aircraft than any other desktop simulator. Think about that. PNDG level study aircraft. The A-10 is harder to master all the systems than PNDG 777, I think. We've got now the Huey in there, the Ka-50 Russian Black Shark. We've got the Gazelle just and on and on and on. This is a new version of DCS World, and it's been coming for quite a while. 1.5 and 2 are basically the same thing, but 2 supports the new map format, which we'll get into. But basically, this is a new platform which supports multi-crew right out of the box. There's only one aircraft using it right now, the L-39, I think it is. But you can be in the cockpit and have somebody else in the other seat, and more developers are taking this on board. We're seeing this in FSX and X-Plane, shared cockpit stuff. It's kind of really critical in a combat environment. So the next aircraft I understand is picking that up is the Gazelle. You'll be able to have a weapons officer who is a real person sitting in wherever on their computer, and you're the pilot, and you can offload responsibility, which is very cool. VR support is built right in. You don't need to buy something like Fly Inside with DCS World. You just go to the options and say, I have an Oculus Rift, and it just works. It's pretty cool. It is a modern platform designed from the ground up for modern hardware. And as it grows, it's got a lot of potential. The maps are incredibly detailed in DCS World. Orbex's FTX Global is what, 4 gig, 5 gig download? Nevada on its own in DCS World is 25 gigabytes, just for Nevada. So stunning levels of detail. An example of some of the study stuff, the Gazelle on the left there, just released about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And then top right, the Mirage M2000C, French fighter, more French stuff. And then bottom right, Razman's upcoming Harrier, which will be the first combat sim that has a Harrier in it since the 90s, I think, or the 80s. Dovetail Games Flight Score. There's their intro video right down. I'm going to be nice. No, seriously, Dovetail Games Flight School is, as I said, a gateway drug. It is an easy, curated, handheld introduction to flight. If you're just curious about using a flight sim, you go and look at FSX or Prepared, they're terribly scary. You need to get all these other add-ons and do all this other stuff, do this configuration, this tweaking. Dovetail Games Flight School is not like that. You simply download it, run it, and go. It teaches, obviously, the basics of flight, VFR, some IFR, and has a simplified user interface. Under the hood, as I've covered in the video, it's built on FSX or Microsoft DSP underneath that. So it has a lot of commonality in this new interface with the old interface. You'll see things that you recognize. But ultimately, it's a more welcoming, more friendly interface. And along the welcoming line, this is very important. It's a curated marketplace for add-ons. If you have FSX and you want to get the PNDG 737, you go to a different website, you download it, you hope, you buy it, download it, install it, unpack it, whatever, and hopefully it installs. It's a bit of a nightmare. The cool thing with Flight Score and all of Dovetail's flight simulators, both of them being on Steam, is it's this curated marketplace. So a new simmer can say, I want to fly the Diamond DA42 and click on buy, and the next time they run the product, there it is. They don't have to do any configuration or tweaking. It's a gateway drug. It's very easy, it's very friendly, it prepares pilots for what to come. And in that respect, it is an amazing product, and it is something that we should value, even though most of the people in this room wouldn't really get much, I guess, benefit out of it, other than refreshing some skills. It is a key to our community in terms of bringing people in. Similarly, IPAX, Aeroflight FS2, along the same veins as Flight School, but a bit more fun, a bit more freeform. It's an entry-level casual sim that has stunning visuals. It features training lessons just like Flight School, 21 of them. It also features 180 detailed airports. Interestingly, a lot of the detailed airports are in the same area covered by Pilot Edge. So it'll be interesting to see if Pilot Edge ever get on board with Aeroflight. I think they might be talking to each other. More than a dozen built-in aircraft, from heaviest to military and so on and so on. Early access at the moment has a pretty weak flight model in some places, but they are, as a development team, talking to people and listening to people and feeding that feedback back in, which is very cool. Keep an eye on Aeroflight. It could be very good. It could be a lot of fun also for the experience sim. It's a great gliding sim. And Combat Air Patrol 2, launched this week. The, I guess in name only, successor to the 1990s Combat Air Patrol. It is a combat and video game focused sim-like experience. So it's not a hardcore sim, it's sim-like. Again, it's that gateway drug thing, getting people into sims. Features the ADAB Harrier, fully dynamic, open-ended campaign, which I didn't expect. And it is VR and track IR capable right now, from day one, which is awesome. Features 250,000 square kilometers of scenery as well. It takes a whole movement. Anyway, what's coming next? Dovetail Flight Sim. We don't know very much about Dovetail's flight technology other than it is built on FSX, and we've seen that a little bit with Flight School. Flight School was something of a preview of Flight Sim. Shouldn't read too much into it, it's quite a way off from Flight Sim being delivered. 64-bit, they are partnering with numerous companies, including, of course, Allbex, to deliver the scenery. Not much more is known, but at the back on the left is the Dovetail team. Hold your hands up. Dovetail, Amy, there's Amy. There's a couple more of them here as well. I think Stephen Hood's here somewhere as well. Just grab them and ask them questions to see what they're willing to speak about. Next up, coming soon, Combat Helo. Who's heard about this? This thing is bonkers. This is an example of what one person can do when he's very, very bored for 5 years. It is a study-level Apache helicopter simulator developed by one guy. A guy called Richard Hawkins sitting in his bedroom. I'm going to go do this. In the 90s and the 80s, we had a lot of these combat sims focused on one aircraft, from the likes of Microprose, Apache Gunship, Jane's Apache Longbow, which is really digital integrations, AH-64D, and so on and so on. He's bringing that back. He's developing this Apache sim. It is track IR and HOTAS capable. It has an advanced flight model using the same techniques as X-Plane. We are hoping it releases this year. We were hoping it released 2 years ago as well. Hopefully this year is the year. Keep an eye on it. And finally, watch this video. This is Red Bull Air Race from Slightly Mad Studios, the people that did Project Cars. Everything you are seeing in this video is in sim footage. Nothing here is pre-rendered. That's kind of important. So obviously it's a simulation of Red Bull Air Racing, which is timed laps around the circuit to see how you compete in a high-performance aircraft, pulling off a lot of weird stunts and crazy maneuvers. It looks absolutely amazing. That team was very focused on visuals and sound with Project Cars, and they're following the same path with this. As I said, it went into beta 2 weeks ago. That's in sim. That's already in sim. Yeah. Would be neat if they was go into GA, but I don't think they will. I'll let that run a little bit longer because I know a lot of you haven't seen this. It's pretty cool though, right? Wow. Amazing. Anyway, I'm going to move on. So there's the 3 coming soons and the 3 that we've done. Hardware. Getting to the end of the state of the simulation bit. Hardware. Interestingly, the thing that's driving hardware for us in simulation are actually the space games, Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen, because they're complicated, they are sim-like. So you have companies now stepping up, producing these incredible HOTAS systems, hands-on throttle and sticks, to fly spaceships. Once the novelty of flying a spaceship wears off, what are you going to do with your HOTAS? You're going to look at a flight sim. But obviously, key among those was Cytek's X55 previously, and now this blue thing, the X56, which is basically the X55 with the buttons moved slightly and changed a little bit, so that when you have a VR headset on, you can feel which button you're supposed to be pressing. It makes sense, I guess. There are also some thumb mouse pointer type things, giving you more access to control for flying in a 6-axis environment like a spaceship. But we've seen investment from companies in mid-range or low-end hardware like that, but also significant investment in new hardware. Given the start of this presentation where I asked, is sim dead? Well, they actually told me, the pundits, that simulation is dead. This is important. GoFlight, Iris Dynamics, Virtual Flight, and Thrustmaster all came out with or announced new mid to high-end products. Mid to high-end being these are expensive, $500 to $1,000 in one case, the Iris Dynamics one, $1,500 pieces of hardware for your home simulator. For a market that's dead, it's interesting to see that kind of investment, don't you think? And you can see up there on the top right, they are here, that's GoFlight's Advanced Edge yoke. We're showing that off today, and bottom right, I don't think they're here, unfortunately, Thrustmaster with their brand new rudder pedals. There's the X56. Oh, this is cool. On the top right, who's heard of Yoko the Yoke in Virtual Flight? They now have Ruddo the rudder pedals. I'll show you those in a bit. And this, a TQ6, and they also have a TQ3, so 6-axis throttles and a 3-axis throttle, mid to high-end, expensive, but very, very high quality. Down the bottom left there, who's heard of Iris Dynamics? A few of you. Iris Dynamics came up with a Kickstarter for a control surface loading yoke. That's not force feedback, but it looks like it. So when you're flying, the faster you go, the heavier the aileron on the back of the aircraft, the elevator on the back of the aircraft is. A control surface loading yoke relays that to you. You try and pull it, it's really heavy, whereas a minute ago it wasn't. That's very expensive. They actually didn't do a good job. When they launched on their Kickstarter a couple of years ago, they had quality issues, they had fulfillment issues, they had a lot of problems. they're back. They're completely back. They've changed their team around, they've changed their build process, they've changed the product around. The Iris Dynamics Dragonfly VR system is what it's now called. I have it, they sent it to me for review. It's pretty cool. So they're back, $1,500 they're not cheap. And there's Blood and Blood pedals. Best name ever. Okay, so in summary, my State of the Sim Nation. Told you it's not going to take 45 minutes. It's a pretty good year. It's been an amazing year. It's the year of Sim, which is something that I said in my presentation last year, that last year was the year of Sim, but it was. Now this year is the year of Sim as well. It's a strong hobby to be in. I think it's growing and growing, and I welcome people like Dovetail and Aerofire that use them into it. It's pretty damn cool and exciting. Anyway, that's the end of that bit. Do you guys want to see that bit? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So my tricks and tips, completely sideways tangent. My views, everybody asks, how do you change the views in your video? Obviously that's easy enough, but this powers it. This is a Razer Orb Weaver, and it's designed for first-person shooters. It's a programmable keyboard that goes on my left hand. It handles all of my views. It is set up to emit joystick button presses, and EasyDock is bound to those buttons. So if I want to go to the pilot in command view, I can't reach it. I can't get a mouse. It's that one. It's that one there. That's my I'm flying view. If I go to the button underneath it, that's my looking down at my pedestal view. The button underneath it is looking up at the lights. The next one to the right is looking down at the instruments. All my aircraft are set up exactly the same way. So no matter what aircraft I'm flying, I know which button in my left hand, without even looking, does which view. And it's very, very cool. I highly recommend it. It's very cool. Works for X-Men as well. Managing your buttons. Who's seen this before? In the back! Surprise. Yes, this is the Derek Spear Designs Flight 2 button box. It is a box of buttons, hence the name, button box. It is just a box of buttons. And it is incredible. Derek sent me this at the beginning of the year to take a look at. Derek, if any of you do sim racing, you might have heard about Derek Spear. He's done a lot of stuff in the sim racing community with add-on boxes and things like that. And he's a fantastic flight. He is an avid flight simmer. He is at the back of the room. I'll wave your hand. Go see him at the show. But this is the Flight 2. This is how I manage my buttons. You can program this to do, well, it's just buttons, so you can bind the buttons up to anything you like. And I have gear flaps, cowl lights, mags, all set to standard things on this, again, regardless of the aircraft and regardless of the sim. I always know which control works this bit because I set it up when I got the aircraft. Also works with anything else, like Truck Sage, or Star Citizen, or anything dangerous. It's completely flexible. It's a set of buttons. As long as you can bind buttons, you can use it. So following on from that, managing your panels. Derek's Flight 2 button box led me to look into how do I manage my panels? How do I actually fit these things to my desk? I am a kayaker. That's my pastime. I go kayak fishing. And there's a company called RAM that does things called RAM mounts. Some of you probably might have heard of those, which I use on the kayaks. They're very, very strong, very easy to fit. And now I use them on my desk. This is a RAM mount combination set here. It's a suction cup, which will attach to anything. And it's incredibly strong. And it has a ball here, and then an arm, another ball, and a bracket. This whole thing costs $30. You can buy new brackets at the top for about $7. And it took me, I guess, 5 minutes to mount this to the Derek Spears Designs Flight 2 button box, and then suction it to my desk, and it is right there, and I can access it. Now using it for my cycling panels as well. It's very, very strong. It's very easy to set up. As long as you can drill 2 holes in the back or something, you're good to go. So if you have panels and things on your desk, look into RAM mounts. Very easy to get going with. FSX and Prepared, the software. There are 3 apps that I cannot live without. One I did a video on recently, SimStarter NG. Who uses that? Nobody uses it. I had a chat with something. You do. I had a chat with them. Really? Okay. I'm sorry to hear that. It's been good for me. I actually can't live without it. And doing the VR stuff with Fly Inside, it actually works with Fly Inside. You can tell it don't start the sim, start Fly Inside instead. And it lets me pull in and knock out various functions of the sim. So I can say if I'm doing Fly Inside, I don't want EasyDock running, for example. Or I don't want Pilot Edge running. I just want the sim and this other stuff. It lets me set up these configurations very quickly. FSUIPC. If you haven't learned what FSUIPC can do in terms of binding controls, then you're missing out. FSUIPC is invaluable for that. It's getting a set of control bindings that work every time you load an aircraft. So you load the aircraft, it remaps your bindings based on what you set for that aircraft. And then finally, FSI panel, which I love, and I said last year, I love. Who uses FSI panel? You should check it out. Jean-Paul Garayo is a French airline pilot who learned to code and came up with this tool, which is basically a training station for FSX and Prepared. You tell it, I want to do a landing, I want to do an approach, I want to do this pattern, this instrument approach, and so on. It's very, very cool. So the controls I use, everybody says, what controls do I use? It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm flying a helicopter, it's this. It is the Rhino, the Cytec X55 Rhino. I do still use it. It's ridiculously easy to change the springs, and it's very easy to bind this up in any sim. There's no frills on this. You know, flicking any one of these switches up is a button, down is a button. It's not like the Thrustmaster where the switch in and out of position is a button. It's very simple. And it's also very light. So for helicopter flight, I'm the Rhino all the way, completely. Who saw the Gazelle video I did? Racing, Gazelle Racing. A few of you? If you look at that, it's pretty smooth. That's all with the Cytec X55 Rhino. If I'm doing anything else, fight or flight, it's that. The Thrustmaster Warhol, which is crazy programmable, crazy heavy, crazy expensive. There's a neat trick with this. Who has this? Any of you have this? The base plate on the joystick you can sit on. It sounds so stupid, I'm going to sit on my joystick, but it actually works. And you can put that on the chair and then put your legs either side of the joystick. It holds the joystick in place, and lowering the center of the joystick beneath you gives you a lot more control. You should try it if you haven't done it before, especially if you're in fighters or something like the A-10. For everything else, like general flight, I am that setup, which is Yoko the Yoko, which I adore. The MFG crosswind rudder pedals, which are the single most configurable rudder pedals on the planet. They're like the transformer rudder pedals. You can adjust how much these pedals are angled in or out, or how flat or not they are, if they're neutral. You can adjust the curve, the response curve, as you move the pedals from side to side. And at the top right there, the Go Flight TQ6 is what I use all the time. If you listen closely in a lot of my videos, you'll hear a metal ka-ching, which is me pulling too hard on the levers, smacking the levers against the bracket. Anyway, finally, so once again, show of hands, who is or wants to make YouTube videos on flying, on all of you? Okay, it's tricky, right? It's not easy. Big question I get all the time is this one. What do you use to record? Also, what are your PC specs? Well, they're on the YouTube page. I like this one. How do you record? Tell me, Froogle. The answer is no. It's the program for recording the sim cockpit, and so on and so on. As you get, I'm going to tell you. Over the years, I've experimented with a few things. I've tried various things from Fraps to Shadow Play to Avamedia capture cards and all sorts of other stuff. It's been kind of fun and also very, very frustrating. The system I use right now, I haven't changed in about 18 months. And it's pretty astounding and good. It's that. So, on the left, that's my Flightsim PC. It is plugged into a box that you can buy at Best Buy today called an Elgato HD60. It's a USB capture device that captures, one of the few that captures 1080p 60 frames per second. The videos it produces, though, are not very good. They're out of sync in terms of their frame rate, and they're pretty big and just difficult to work with. So that HD60 is plugged into an Origin PC. I use a second machine to record everything. The second machine is capturing for the HD60, and the raw video is then piped into this. Anybody know what this is? Handbrake. Handbrake is a free downloadable tool, video editing, video processing tool. All the video that I record goes into Handbrake, and I tell Handbrake, convert this video to 60 frames per second locked. And it will do some keyframing, which is how sometimes in my 60 FPS videos it actually looks a lot smoother than you know for sure the sim probably was. So it will do some smoothing out as well, and it gives me a locked 60 frames per second video file, which I can then load into Premiere on the left. If I'm doing a fully loaded video, how many people watch those? There is the old capture box at the bottom right. That is an Avamedia Live Gamer Mobile. The cool thing with the Avamedia Live Gamer Mobile, and this is important as well if you don't have a second PC for recording, is it takes SD cards. So you plug it into a video source, and when you want to record, that big round thing on the top is a button. You whack the button, it starts flashing, and saves everything on the SD cards. So when I'm doing a fully loaded video, that recording PC is also showing you the charts. It is connected to the Avamedia down here. It records its own video onto an SD file. Those SD files are then put into Handbrake once again, and then sent over to Premiere. And that's it. That's just a summary of it. Also worth noting as well, if you're doing something or trying to do something like a fully loaded video where you have multiple video tracks that you need to sync up, although Premiere is very, very expensive, and for that, it's kind of scary expensive, but it does something called multi-camera editing, and it syncs on sound. So the microphone that I record with, that's on a mic boom and it's in front of my face. There is another microphone on the desk that you don't hear, which is plugged into the little Elgato thing, sorry, the Avamedia thing, also recording my voice onto those video tracks. I can load all the video footage from both devices now into Adobe Premiere and say sync on my voice. It will sync up my voice tracks in the two video things, line them both up, and then to produce those cuts between the different shots, it's real simple. You go multi-camera edit, play, and then press number 1 or 2. As it's playing, you'll hear me say in the video, now let's go over to the other computer. That's my key to press number 2, and it just cuts the other camera straight in. back to 1, back to 2. It's actually very simple. So that's it. That's all I got. As always, thank you for watching. My name is Froogle. I'll see you directly. I know we started late. We're trying to claw back the time.